All right, good evening, and welcome to Spring Skies. My name is David Weigel, and I'm the Planetarium Director at the Intuitive Planetarium at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. All right, so welcome to everyone joining us right now. In a few minutes, we're going to get started on a quick tour of what's visible in the night sky. And first, I want to direct your attention to what's on my screen right here, which is a beautifully stunning picture, which just so happens to be my background. This is the Veil Nebula, and this is actually just a piece of the Veil Nebula, but it's the result of a stellar explosion, and it is a bunch of gaseous material that's being pushed out into space by this explosive shockwave and sort of smushing on itself, which produces this sort of structure that you can see in here, and it's quite beautiful. So while we're giving a few more people time to jump in, where is everyone from? Where is everyone watching from this evening, so that we can tailor the sky to you? And great comments to start out with I'm the best. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. Cool, I like that. Also, question for you, how many people have been to the Intuitive Planetarium at the Space and Rocket Center? At least 12. Fantastic. All right, so Amanda is watching from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Exciting. Welcome, welcome. Your sky is essentially identical to ours. Huntsville, Gunnersville, Denver. You're all more or less in the same place. Cool. Athens, Coleman. Fantastic. Hello to Gavin, Sue, Bess, Holly, Suzanne twice, Carrie, fantastic. And yes, a few of you are pointing out that it is a little bit wet outside, and no doubt there, it's quite wet. It's been pouring on me all day, but never fear. As soon as it stops raining, if it ever does here in Alabama, you can go outside and see some beautiful stars. And so, with that, I think we should go ahead and jump in. So I'm going to do this presentation in a software called Worldwide Telescope, which I just pulled up in here. And if you'd like, this is actually something that you can follow along with me. I will be using this software, and this is something that you can download onto your computer for free, or it's something that you can use on the website, which is worldwidetelescope.org. So feel free to navigate to that if you like. I'll be using the Windows version simply so that I can fly along with an Xbox controller, so you don't hear my mouse clicking every 2 seconds. So what we're going to do is begin by giving a quick tutorial of how you might go about using this, and if you want a further tutorial, we've posted 3 videos in the last few days giving you a rundown of how to use this and explore the universe on your own, which is a lot of fun. So if you take your mouse and you left click and drag, you can maneuver around the sky. And I understand that there are many buttons that you're seeing, and your screen may look similar or a little bit different to mine. But don't get overwhelmed by all the buttons on the screen. Rather, just sort of click and drag in the main window in here. And you'll notice that, first off, we're looking at something that is hopefully fairly familiar to you. This is the constellation Orion, and this is recognizable in the night sky in the winter months and at this time of year because of, because of these 3 stars right in here, which are Orion's belt. So these 3 stars are very bright. They're very close together. Keep moving that away. And they have 4 stars that form almost a rectangle around them. We have Betelgeuse right in here, we have Rigel right in here, which are very opposite colors. Betelgeuse is sort of reddish, Rigel is sort of bluish, and then we have Bellatrix and Saiph in here, also blue, slightly dimmer. But all of these are going to be very bright stars that you can easily pick out. So to bring everyone back up to speed who's just chiming in, we're using the software Worldwide Telescope, which you can find at worldwidetelescope.org, and you can follow along on their web version if you like. And yes, this is the same Orion's belt from Men in Black, but maybe different storylines that are a little bit more real. Either way, so one thing that's really cool is we can explore this night sky, but not only can we see what stars are visible, and you can see that I am viewing from Huntsville up in here, and as a result, Worldwide Telescope is drawing the world for me, the Earth, so that we can't see through it at this time of year. And we are in real time here at 7:05 p.m. Central Time. So we can navigate around, but we can also zoom in, which is really cool. So if you were looking at just below Orion's belt at this sort of sword hanging down in here, Orion is a hunter, and he has a sword hanging off his belt. He has a nice big shield right in here and a club arching up this way. I know this looks like it should be a bow and arrow, but Orion doesn't use a bow, so this is a shield instead. But we can use the scrolling wheel in here to zoom in, or if you're on a laptop, you can use two fingers or a tablet or something like that. You can pinch and zoom, and that will help you out. And we can zoom in, and better resolution will tile in at the willingness of your internet, I suppose. And you'll notice that this is a bit, we have good resolution, but it's a little bit washed out in here. And at the bottom of the screen, we actually have this context bar that changes as we move around the sky, and it shows us what different imagery is available. And so we can overlay this different imagery on the sky, and this allows us to explore further. So if I click one of these things, this says Messier 42, which is the catalog designation of Orion's Nebula. Charles Messier was a French astronomer who in about the 1700s was very interested in looking at comets, and he would look in the sky for these different fuzzy patches, and when he was looking at them and they didn't move against the background sky, he would say, okay, it's not a comet and you shouldn't look here. And he made this nice big catalog about this whole thing of where not to look. And now, with better telescopes, we look there, and voila, this is fantastic. And it was a little bit silly that he said, don't look here. Of course, he didn't know better, but now we do. So you can see in here all sorts of really pretty structure. For those of you who joined us a little late, my initial background, I'll go back to it for just a moment. This was the Veil Nebula, and the Veil Nebula is the result of a supernova. The Orion Nebula, which is in here, is the result, sort of the opposite end of the stellar life cycle. This is going to be where stars are born, so this is a stellar nursery instead. We can zoom away from that. So I'm going to switch over to the Xbox controller for now, unless I have to click, so that you're spared from all of my clicking noise. So we can see a very, very beautiful nebulous region in there. And you'll notice that as we move through the sky, I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. As we move through the sky, this context bar changes a little bit. And so if we zoom in closer to Orion's belt, you'll see two other things that are very, very pretty. We have something that looks a little bit like a flame and something that looks a little bit like a horse. So this is the Flame Nebula in here and the Horsehead Nebula in here. And we can provide a higher resolution picture of the Flame Nebula. That's quite nice. And zoom in on the Horsehead Nebula and get a higher resolution one here, which happens to be rather big and encompasses the Flame Nebula. Very convenient. So if you're interested in learning more about these specific pictures that we're overlaying, you can right-click on them and take a look at their properties, which showed up on another screen. Let me pull that over for you. And it tells you some different information about it. It tells you who took the picture. In this case, is an amateur astronomer in here, but also in some cases is Hubble, for example, or other space telescopes, and gives you opportunity to get more information about these various things and visit different websites and do some research on them. We can also compare these foreground images to the background images if we use this little image crossfade tool in here. And so you can take a look at structure between pictures. And in this case, we have a visible light background and we have a visible light foreground, and that's all fine and good, but it shows us essentially the same thing and at very similar resolution. We can change this imagery to something like infrared, for example. And in this case, it's not going to be the best example because we're very much out of resolution at something that zoomed in until we get higher resolution imagery that tiles in. But what we're looking at now is a view of the night sky that's completely different because this is looking in infrared wavelengths. So this is looking at the sky as if you were looking with night vision goggles, looking at body heat, for example. So a totally different view of the night sky. So that, compared to visible light, is a good bit different. Pretty neat. All right, fantastic. I was making sure I haven't missed any of your comments, and I missed several, and I apologize. But I see an awesome, so we'll go with that. Cool. So getting back to this, if you look pretty much due south right now through all of the clouds, then you should be able to see Orion. And that's situated, again, about due south, fairly high in the sky, very, very pretty. Lower in the sky is going to be the brightest star in the sky that's not named the Sun, and this is Sirius right in here, which is part of Canis Major. So this is sort of the head coming up here of the dog. We have front legs, its whole body in here with a tail sticking down, and then legs, back legs right here. So sort of a two-dimensional dog, but most constellations are, I suppose. So this star is very, very bright in the sky, brightest star in the sky, not named the Sun, and Orion is very bright and very easy to pick out. So these are absolutely things that you should be able to find on your own, looking south right after sunset. If we go a little bit higher in the sky, and a little bit further towards the west, we're going to be able to see this grouping of stars right in here, which looks like a little dipper. This is called the Pleiades, or Subaru in Japanese. And this was interesting because it used to be an ancient eye test. So a long time ago, people would look up at this constellation, or this asterism rather, because it's not a constellation by itself, it's this grouping of stars. They would look up at this, and if they were able to see 5 stars, then we knew that their vision was sort of poor. If they were able to see 6 stars, that was fairly normal. And if they were able to see 7, then you were very, very acute of vision. So if we now, today, look at these stars with higher power telescopes, we get something a good bit better. And we can see maybe 40 stars or so through binoculars or a very, very low power telescope. With higher power telescopes, we can see a couple thousand stars, a few thousand stars. So this is a very young star cluster, an open star cluster that we call the Pleiades, like I said. They are colored blue because they're hot. They're rather young as well. And they're fairly close, maybe 430 light years away, something like that, where a light year is the average, or is the distance that light travels in a year. And if we move over here, which is the face of Taurus the Bull, sort of V-shape, this is what a star cluster looks like that's closer, about a third of the distance. It's sort of V-shaped. Again, and these are the Hyades. So we have the Pleiades over here and the Hyades with the bright star Aldebaran, which is very prominent in here. So these 4 things, Orion, Canis Major, particularly Sirius, the face of Taurus the Bull, and the shoulder of the Bull, which is the Pleiades, are all very recognizable in the sky. And I'm going to bring up some constellation lines to give you an idea of what you were missing there. And we can add some names as well, if that helps. Very cool. So we're going to move a little bit further in the sky and look in the direction north. And if we look due north, then we'll find Polaris, the North Star, right in here. And you can see Ursa Minor, which is also known as the Little Dipper, or the Little Bear in here. And then we have Ursa Major, who is the Great Bear, and then the Big Dipper is the backside and tail of the Big Bear. So the Big Dipper is not a constellation, it's actually an asterism, which is this sort of simpler pattern of stars in the sky. And in looking in the north, the Big Dipper is going to be quite prominent, even though it's fairly low at this time of year. And the Little Dipper is going to be a lot less prominent because the stars are generally a good bit less bright. Polaris is not really all that bright in the sky. So if we use these two stars at the end of the Big Dipper, we can actually point to Polaris right in here. And a way that you can make sure that you're going the right distance in the sky is if you extend your fist, and let's see if I can get this in the screen here. If you extend your fist at arm's length and you stick out your thumb and your pinky, they should stretch between Dubhe and Polaris right in here pretty reasonably well. And unless you have really, really little hands or really, really big hands, and then more power to you either way. But should stretch pretty nicely between them, and that's how you can tell that you are going the right distance if you're following these two pointer stars over here. To wrap up for this evening, I want to advance time a little bit. So we're going to change this, and you'll notice that the sky is rotating, and it seems to be rotating around the North Star because this star is pretty well aligned with our north polar axis. And so as the Earth rotates, it's as if it is rotating around an invisible pole, which just so happens to stretch sort of infinitely towards this star. Now, as we get further into the evening, or we go further towards, further into spring, right now we're sitting at about just before 11 p.m., we can use the handle of Ursa Major in here, the handle of the Big Dipper, rather, and arc along this curvature down to Arcturus, which helps us find Boötis the herdsman. That would be Boötis, not Bo-O-Ts, or Booties, or Boots, or something weird like that. Boötis. And so we can arc to Arcturus, and then continue on and spike down to Spica. So that helps us find Boötis the herdsman and Virgo, the beautiful young maiden. And to give you an idea of what they're supposed to look like, maybe this helps a little bit. So you can see that we have a beautiful head in here, arms, legs, for days, something like that. I'm going to bring that back down now. And again, you can explore this further at worldwidetelescope.org if you were just chiming in recently. And I told you I was wrapping up, but I think I'd like to show you one other thing while we're at it, because it's really cool. If you go to the search function up in here, you can search for anything you like. And I just so happen to know that somewhere around in here are two beautiful galaxies. One is known as M81, Bode's galaxy, and the other is known as M82, which is the Cigar galaxy. So if I search for M81 in here, it will give me these various options, and then it will show me where they are in the sky. So if I click on this once, it will bring me to it. And one thing that I think is really neat about Worldwide Telescope is that it allows you to view this real data and do so view other data in context with sort of bigger data. So this is a very nice picture of this galaxy, but we can overlay some better ones. And actually, I really like this one. This is a composite from the Hubble Space Telescope, from the Spitzer Space Telescope, and the Chandra Space Telescope. So that's visible light, infrared light, and X-ray. So if I right-click on this and make sure that the sky is highlighted over here, there we go. If I right-click on this in the Windows version, I can add this as a layer, so it sort of pops in and stays there. And then if we zoom out just a little bit, we'll notice here's another awesome galaxy, which happens to be M82. So as long as the sky is still highlighted in here, I can right-click on this, add this as a layer, and so now I can explore both of these with very high resolution right next to each other. Wait for this to catch up with the internet here. If you're wondering why this is called the cigar galaxy, that's a very fair point, because this looks maybe like a butterfly or anything like anything that's not a cigar. But only recently have we been able to see these sort of pieces in here, and this sort of long part was most of what people could see until recent technological developments. So this is where the name came from, and now it's sort of deprecated. But what you're seeing in here is actually a lot of material that is being stolen from this galaxy over here, M81. We are looking at a lot of gravitational interaction between these two, where M82, which is the other one, is stealing material from M81, and the material going from M81, it's sort of hard to go between them here, the material from M81 is falling into M82 and compressing tightly, and this heats up that material and causes increased stellar birth, which is exciting. So we call this star bursting, and there is much higher stellar birth in this galaxy than we see in most galaxies. So that's a pretty exciting thing. So with that said, probably time for us to wrap up for this evening. It seems like you've enjoyed it, and I hope you have. If there is any other question that I can answer, this is your opportunity in 5, 4, 3, 2. No, you can also post a comment afterward. You can rewatch this as well. It'll get posted as soon as we're finished here. And we are more than happy to answer any questions that you have about the night sky, and you can tune in with us again in the future, hopefully next week. So with that said, thank you so much. Make sure you keep looking up. Remember that you can go outside even in these crazy times and take a look at the night sky as long as it's not raining. So go outside and look up and have fun. Thanks so much, and have a good night.